This afternoon's hobby enhancement is pink. This afternoon, it's time to show off the completed army of gibbering silliness. I started this project off as something I've been meaning to do for a long time. Pretty much as soon as I bought the Demons book for the Corn guys, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a Zench army? And much has gone on since then. But in my travels, I managed to accumulate a whole bunch of second-hand bits and pieces. And they're finally painted. I think I waffled on a bit about the collection process in an earlier video, so I'll skip that and show you what I've gone and done. So here with the pink boys, whatever the hell they are, gender neutral ectoplasm. These were all painted with, half of them were painted with Games Workshop contrast paints, and the other half were painted with Vallejo magenta ink. And you need 2 coats of the magenta ink to make that work. 1 coat of the Games Workshop contrast paints. And then the extra bits, so the claws and teeth and whatnots, were done with just Games Workshop or Vallejo, one of the two, just black paint. I didn't bother with highlighting and everything because the whole idea of this army was to do it fast and make the inks and the washes do as much work as possible. So this lot, they've actually come up okay. And the metal bits I did, I tried bronze originally, but they didn't work quite the way I liked, so I did them in silver metal. It's not as prominent on these ones, but if we look at the blue horrors, let's get a good angle. You can see the blue horrors have quite a bit of metal on them, and the silver works better against the blue than the bronze did. Done all the tongues red because, I just like it that way. So I've got a total of 2 units of 21 pink horrors and 2 units of 9 blue horrors, which is the minimum size, which I think may have something to do with the magical numbers of each of the chaos deities or something, thinking back to many editions ago. I do like the blue horrors. They've got these little details like little red feathers on them. Well, feathers on them, I did them red. And I used a black wash on those, I think, and little flames that they're throwing around. So the blue horrors are just running around annoying people by hocking fireballs at them, which the pink horrors do too. But it's worth noting these blue horrors were originally boxed up as pink horrors from 8th edition as the plastics, but I've repurposed them as blue horrors. A bit more of the old-fashioned thing. So I think in 8th edition if you go back enough editions, what used to happen was you'd be fighting a unit of pink horrors, and every time you killed one, it would turn into 2 blue horrors. And you didn't have to kill those little bastards. And the blue horrors are smaller and not as effective. That's changed a couple of times over editions. They're now separate units. I think in 8th edition, you kill a pink horror and you'd get a couple of template markers or something. The markers were meant to be blue horrors, and that did something. Never played these boys in that faction, or that edition. Now the blue horrors get their own unit of slightly less powerful troops who count as light infantry, whereas the pink horrors count as heavy infantry and therefore get that +1 combat res bonus, whereas the lighter guys get a free reform. So I suspect these are going to be an ablative unit that you send out to do redirects and generally be annoying. I think I did most of these with 1 coat of blue, maybe 2. It really depended on how well I had shaken the bottle. The Vallejo inks are great, but you've got to shake the shit out of the dropper bottles to get consistency in the ink. And I did have a spot of bother with that. More me than the paints, I think. And yeah, I did more the blue wash, then I did the details afterwards. Quick note on the flames. The way that I decided to do them that's fast was just to paint them orange, which usually took a couple of layers. I did the second layer a bit roughly, to be honest, just to pick out the highlights. And then I used a black wash Now it's not the most realistic way of doing fire, but it looks okay. And the whole idea with this is the speed paint. And my running excuse for lack of realism is that A, it's a pack of fucking demons, and B, I figured their fire's going to be magical anyway, so it can look like whatever you want it to look like. If you don't like that excuse, I don't care, because these are my toys and I'm going to play with them. What else have we got? That's right. We have Screamers. I love these guys. I've never actually fielded them in a battle. I'm hoping to, well, tomorrow if I'm lucky. But I just love the way these work. They do a D3 wounds each, and they just charge in like manta rays and latch onto something and twist about and try and rip flesh off of it. They only do that to monster-sized creatures, but the idea of it's great. These are one of very few models where I actually used two types of ink, two colours of ink on the same model. I wasn't 100% sure it worked. It didn't blend together the way I thought it would. In fact, where I overlapped them, it tends to just turn into tends to get a bit scungy where the two colours blur into each other. Oops, get the focus right there. That wasn't the way I had intended it, but that's the way it went, so I got a bit more careful with the later models to not overlap the ink. There must be some way of blending them, which masters know, and I didn't bother to look up. So the end result it reminds me of hypercolored t-shirts, if you're of an age and stage in life where you remember when those things were fashionable. But a friend of mine saw them for the first day the other day, and he liked them, and I'll take that, as long as they do the job. They look suitably freaky either way. Oh, what else do we have? We have 15 or so flamers. Now you can see with these they're different shades of blue, which is probably okay actually, it breaks it up a little bit. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to make them more smooth like these blue horrors, but I had some trouble with not shaking the bottle thoroughly enough and having some pigment issues. But I got on with it, and as you can see, the flamers have an awful lot of that orange fire on them. And again, I quite like that look. Makes for a distinctive and characteristic unit that maybe other people don't have. And anyway, got the job done. Now you can see on the bases, I've used Back to Basics, which is a local provider, laser cut bases, because I didn't have enough of the right size ones. And in fact, the 25mm bases that I had collected for this army under 8th edition, I've repurposed for the blue horrors. And this is a good demonstration of why they upped the base sizes, right? Because these were always designed to be, well, firstly pink horrors, and secondly on 25mm bases, back pre-Old World. And they barely rank up. I'm shuffling them around to try and fit them in. And in fact, you can see there's some gaps between bases there. And even these old school pink horrors from God knows how many years ago, those are metal. They would have been a bit of a nightmare to rank up, certainly facing forward on 25mm bases historically. That's assuming they weren't on 20mm back when these were actually made. And the slaughter bases were diagonal back in the day, so they would have been facing like 45 degrees off center. So that's a bit of an observation. But the other thing, I did the bases pretty much as I always do, but over New Year's I happened to be in Bangkok, and whenever I travel overseas with the family, I try and find a local game store and go and buy something there. So, you know, I've got demons from Hong Kong and some other demons from Beijing. I've got paintbrushes and some other odds and ends from Singapore. I got, you know, other things from other places. And I bought paintbrushes and some terrain from this place in Bangkok. And they had some very old flower tufts. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do a demon army soon. Wouldn't it be nice to have a bunch of gibbering pink horrors prattling their way through a flower meadow? So I've done the whole army with little tufts of flowers and things of that ilk, just to break it up and make what's already a very silly army just that little bit more silly. And to be fair, I've actually seen this done for the first time with a mate's army of, it's probably French actually, it's Napoleonics in 28mm. I thought, oh, that's quite a lot of attention to detail, you don't get that every day, I should have a go at that one day. And yeah, here it is. What else have we got? That's right, the characters. I've got this bloke, I've always wanted this miniature, this is lead, I traded this off of Amelia for something. He's running around as a herald in my current 2,000 point list. This is about a 2,900 point list all up, everything. If you combine it together, could probably get another 100 points in that if I really needed to. But when I did a 2,000 point list for a game tomorrow, I've got this guy flapping about as a level 3 wizard to try and get around the flanks and generally get out of the spell bubble and make a nuisance of himself. I've decided to name this chap Blazing Saddle. For fairly obvious reasons, I think. And he's got a disc, as you can see, flies around, hocking magic, being annoying. Then we've got this other chap next to him. I'll get some better light. This is actually just a rank and file model, but I didn't have enough command items in this army for everything I needed. And I didn't want to bodgy on standards and things onto the pink horrors that might not look too good. And so I just thought, well, I'll get a rank and file one. I'll paint him pink and give him a standard. And he can either be a standard bearer, or he can be for a unit, or he can be a herald and be the army standard bearer. So I've decided to call this guy Bick, because he's cheap and he's plastic and he lights fires. So that's those two. Oh, I've also got this little chap in here. Let's get a good zoom on that. This is old school, and it's old enough that this might actually be a herald or some such thing from yesteryear. No reason the zoom's struggling a bit with this chap. So I don't know if to use that as a herald or just to use that as unit champion. Out of all the big wompy hands that these miniatures have, look at the size of that that slapper. Oh my lordy my. So yeah, he may well end up being a herald. And that brings us to this happy-go-lucky character here. This is the only one that I bought new. Everything else I picked up second-hand from one place or another, which is also why I don't have quite enough blue horrors or quite enough of the flying t-shirts. Yeah, so I couldn't find one of these second-hand in the condition I wanted it, so I really wanted nuance sprue for this thing. Everything else, well, some of this army was nuance sprue, some of it was already assembled and undercoated, some of it was based and I had to pull them off of bases. It's in various states, although most of the miniatures were actually pretty good nick once you got past the odd assembly quirk. But this big fella, I bought in a box, $200 frickin'. Probably about as much as I paid for the rest of the army combined. And I love this miniature. I painted him using the same methods that I used everywhere else, and it actually worked really well. I used one tone of blue, like just one slop of blue ink over the whole thing. I don't know how well it comes out in the camera, but this worked really well, and I didn't have to do anything else to it. I thought I was going to have to go over it with dry brushing and more layers and all that, but I realised pretty quick that if I did that, I'd actually make it worse and not better. The metal sort of coming out in this light. I just did one shade of the what they used to call bolt gun metal, whatever it's called now, one wash of black, and then pretty light dry brushing. I thought about bringing it up with a lighter silver on top of that, but I thought no, that's going to be a bit much given the colours of the other parts of the model. Then for the pink, the Vallejo pink again. That needed 2 coats, but it did the job. Comes out a little bit flatter on camera in this lighting than what I'm actually seeing with the naked eye. But those 2 layers of ink got into all the detail. You might be able to see on camera this, the way it's recessed, it's a bit darker. Where it's elevated, it's actually coming out with a bit more of the white coming through. For the loincloth, a bit of a strange thing to be doing a close-up on a big birdie's loincloth, but I kept that simple. I just did it white with a black wash. And I found that when you muck around with white too much, you try and do too many things with it, it often makes it worse instead of better, unless you're prepared to go the whole Games Workshop heavy metal team methodology and get that elevated level of result. The trick for me is to try and make white a smooth colour, because the amount of pigment in the paint can sometimes make it a bit crunchy, like when you paint it or dry brush over the top and all that sort of thing. Oh, and he's got the same big red lickety long tongue. And there's lots of little details in this miniature that really set it apart. It's a fantastic figure. It's got things like, you might be able to see this staff that it's wielding is actually in 2 parts. Top part's got flames coming out of it, but the only thing connecting that top part to the rest of the staff is some of the magical fire. So that's a nice touch. There's little bits of decorative armour and strange symbolic doohickeys coming off of him. And even the toes. I mean, somebody spent some time making this thing really a piece of work. I don't mind spending $200 on this. I lie. $200 is too bloody much for any toy, but I feel I got my money's worth. No, I lie. It's a piece of plastic. It probably cost them 50 cents to make. But I think even though it cost me an unreasonable amount of money, I really like this model. As for naming, I thought about calling him Birdie Num Num. Bit of an old pop culture reference, but that was a bit silly. And then I thought of coming up with this backstory for who this nutter is, and I thought, well, maybe he's like Big Bird's dodgy uncle, and he got kicked off of Sesame Street trying to sell PCP to the other Muppets. But then I thought, if I get carried away with that idea, I might get in trouble. So I've decided to stick with the whole bin chicken narrative, which will make sense to anybody who's seen an ibis doing its business in Australia. Anyway, that there is the general, all, I don't know, 460 odd points of him. Lording it over all the more reasonably proportioned models. And that's it. That's the job done. I'm going to stop here. I don't know. There's plenty of other miniatures you can buy, and I don't know. I might grab some blue scribes or something one day, some such thing. But I'm trying to do armies reasonably contained in terms of point size, especially after the mayhem that I got caught up in with the Dark Elves. I've got some other armies that I want to get to, and the only way I'm going to get to all of those armies is if I keep them contained to around about the 2,500 to 3,000 point mark. Much like what I did with the Corn Demons. The Dark Elves, they're worth about twice as many points if you flesh out the whole army. But they took me years. I'll have a look in a minute and see how many years that took. I didn't really get started on this army until I got the bases in from Back to Basics a few months back. And then this army just went up so easily and efficiently. And I think that comes down to choosing a limited palette. and choosing speed painting techniques, and knowing where to use the speed painting and where to slow down and take the time to get something right. So you don't compromise tabletop standard of quality, but you don't spend ages doing stuff that nobody's going to bloody notice after a couple of beers while they're throwing dice at it. And I'm going to try and apply that philosophy to the next couple of armies that I've got in mind. But for now, this is mission complete. I've now got to get these buggers into a battle. No idea how they're going to work. I have theories, and no doubt the people I'm going to play against are going to do their absolute damnedest to prove those theories wrong. But I'll hopefully get to video one or two of those games and upload those at a later point. Do feel free to hit like, subscribe, send a comment, all that sort of thing. Let me know what you would have done differently, what you like or don't like. It all helps the algorithm, helps other people go, oh, shit, this has just popped up on my feed. But for now, time to call it a day.